However hard it's been, get up and push again.
It seems the thrust of the defense argument, and I appreciate their advocacy and argument, but it's not shared by the Commonwealth, is that they were lovey-dovey and got along well that night. Well, at the time of this incident, it seems there's substantial evidence that Miss Reed was not happy with Mr. O'Keefe. She was asked, would you say that you were angry with John that night? Her answer was yes. She says, I was temporarily frustrated, it wasn't an argument. She also says, were you worried at him or pissed at him or both? I was pissed until I fell asleep. Now, in addition to her anger, she specifies some of the tension. We heard from the testimony of Jen McCabe that when she gave directions to John O'Keefe, she mentioned a mother of a child who Mr. O'Keefe had a prior relationship with. That this is minutes before we allege the collision happened. In the interviews that she has provided to these different outlets, she discusses the fact that she hears this information and that there was an issue or some type of interaction about the fact that he was previously dated another woman. And this is a conversation that takes place minutes before the collision. We have statements from the defendant herself that show the discord in the relationship, the anger, being pissed, the motive, corroborated by the niece's testimony, but the imminency of it, that this is happening in real time moments before John O'Keefe's death. And so all of this should be admissible. It's all supportive of each other.
Your Honor, if I could just correct the record very quickly.
Sure.
If anything Mr. Brennan just said was true, he might have an argument. My goodness. It's important to get some of the facts right. You got to get some of them right. The conversation that he just referenced with Jen McCabe was the next day. It was the next morning. Not minutes before the collision. He's read the every time he stands up, he says, I've read the I wasn't there, I've read the transcripts. We got to hold him to that burden, Your Honor. You got to get the facts right. That conversation with Jen McCabe was the next morning after John O'Keefe had been found, after he didn't come home.
I'm sorry, I just need to correct.
I'm sorry, I was talking to my client real quick. I'm not quite done. This was during the time after 5:07, after the SUV leaves, we see One Meadows, and Jen McCabe and Kerry Roberts get together, and as they're looking for them, as they're looking for him and searching for him, that's the point at which they have the conversation about being about some other woman, or why he might not have come home, or what her mindset might have been at the time. It's after the fact, well after the fact. The other issues concerning Karen Reed's statements about being upset, or in Gretchen Voss's words, were you pissed at him? It was in context of when. When were you upset with him? When he didn't come back out. When he didn't come back to the car. After she left, she was angry. That's where all the voicemails take place. That's what she was talking about, having been angry. There is no evidence, none whatsoever, no evidence in the record. I want to make this as crystal clear as I can. No controverted evidence, no suspect, no evidence at all that John O'Keefe and Karen Reed had a single crossword that night before he ended up missing and she went home. Before he ended up walking out of the car, going toward the house, and she ended up leaving when he didn't come back out. Zero. The only evidence that was propounded throughout that entire day was hours and hours earlier that morning, dealing with, did you feed the kids donuts? And yeah, I did. You know I don't like it when you feed the kids donuts. She was spoiling the kids. It was not enough to enrage anybody. It's ridiculous. And the evidence that it didn't enrage anybody is the fact that they ended up later that night together in a lovey-dovey environment. Getting along fine, getting along wonderfully. That's why the Commonwealth cannot make their burden to establish that this was the type of information that she would have, by necessity, acted on, and not just acted on in any way, acted on in a way that's consistent with their theory that she would have received the information and murdered him for it. That's the hurdle over which the Commonwealth cannot leap for the admissibility of this type of evidence. It's far, far more prejudicial than it is probative.
Okay.
Before accusing somebody of getting it wrong, the person accusing should be right. I know that Mr. Jackson, Attorney Jackson, was present during the Voss interviews, but apparently they haven't listened to the interviews or read the transcripts. Page 88, line 22. Not the next morning. When Jen was navigating John to the Alberts, she said it's near Ashley's house. Ashley and John had hooked up prior to John and I dating. Similarly, page 92, line 1, totally contrary to what you just heard. Totally. There was a woman who was a mother to kids that were close to John's kids who lived very close to the Alberts. In fact, when Jen was navigating John to the Alberts, when I was driving, she said it near Ashley's house. Ashley and John had hooked up prior to John and I dating. She broke up briefly with her husband. Not my words.
All right. So we're going to break. We've got a lot of ground to still cover. I suggest that we take the personal attacks completely out of this.
Do it.
Hold on. Both sides. I want to get through these motions today. If we don't, I'll bring you back tomorrow. I'll bring you back Monday. Let's get through these motions. Leave all the attacks, all the falsehoods, all of that. Leave it all aside. Let's focus on the motions and get through this. So I'll see everybody at 2 o'clock.
Your Honor, if I could say one more thing. As the court ponders this last issue.
I'm not even thinking about it for the next hour. Let's leave it.
Do it.
The world is a wasteland, the state is a rat trap. Cheese and load the pack under the hood of the hatchback before you get snatched back. It's all up to you, young blood, they knew none about what you do. The truth is you finna be one of them ones. History is so funny, it's only writ with ink that's on money. So take a drink and hit the track running. Don't need to think the shit's in your bloodstream. Try to keep it posting the tempo, just cause it's automatic don't mean that it is simple.